Welcome back to the channel. Bit of a different backdrop, still in my house. Unfortunately, have not been able to go anywhere that much more interesting. Oh, we'll learn enough to travel soon enough. But anyways, subject of this video is books and a way I feel of reading a book that makes the advice given to you. I'm gonna go with 10 times more effective, but I don't know, it's an arbitrary thing that will work for a title. Anywho, let's get into it. Now this applies to self-improvement books, books that offer up advice on how to improve certain areas of your life. This doesn't apply it to fiction books, so if you thought this was about fiction books, you can click off and go watch one of my other videos because this won't really pay much help to your interest in books. But for self-improvement books and books of the sort, a lot of people choose to just read cover to cover, which is what I have done in the past. And, you know, you can take a lot of value from a book doing as such. But, you know, you kind of just read. And it feels, by the end of it, it kind of feels like you read for the sake of reading the book. Because you kind of realise, oh, I actually haven't implemented a lot of the advice in the book into my actual life. Which begs the question, how do we actually go about reading a book and taking what knowledge it offers to us and implementing it into our life? Well, that's where this technique of reading a book comes in. Now, I'm not going to try and take credit for this. I got this off of someone else who probably got it off of someone else. Back when I used to watch Hamza a lot, this is how he suggested to read books. And every time I have read a book in such fashion, it has helped me implement the advice a lot better. So, you know, props to Hamza for the piece of advice. Thank you very much. Right, what you want to do is you want to read the book. You want to read whatever chapter you're in. And if it comes to a point in the book where it gives you a piece of advice, if and when possible, put down the book and go and implement that piece of advice immediately or as soon as possible. So if it means leaving your house and, I know, going on a 5-minute walk to achieve this piece of advice, and you can do that right now, I suggest you go and do it. You'll be implementing the piece of advice, number one, straight away, which means you're more likely to build a better understanding. And then you have a personal example of how the piece of advice works and a bit of evidence to look back on in the future when you need to call back to that piece of advice for help. And then you would repeat cycle, as in you carry on, you read, you do that again with the next piece of advice, you carry on, you read, you do that again with the next piece of advice, and so on through the book. And a great book for an example of this, if you were struggling to understand what I'm on about, is the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. Got there in the end, by Dale Carnegie. Now, this is a book you don't have to read cover to cover to gain any sort of value from it. You can literally pick up in the middle of the book at whatever chapter it was on and read it, take the advice and go implement it, and it would help. Because it's just a book about how you can be more sociable, more effectively social, you know, garner more attention, and how to influence people the way you're speaking, and just be a more effective communicator. So literally opening up any page, reading a bit of it, it will be helpful in some way, shape or form to you. But the way to get the most out of this book is, even if you do want to read cover to cover in the order the book was written or is printed, you read the first chapter. I don't exactly remember what the first chapter was about, but it started with body language. As far as I can remember, it started with body language. And so I think the first thing was about eye contact. So we're going to use that as the example. So you would read about eye contact in the book. And when you come to the end of that chapter or that end of that piece of advice within the chapter it's in, you would put the book down and you would, if you're home, you would, I suppose, go downstairs and have a conversation with your mum, your dad, your brother, your sister, your roommates if you don't live with your family, whoever it is you live with. And, you know, you would just have a genuine conversation and just practice making that eye contact, you know, just to get that instant practice of the piece of advice just into your life. Then after that conversation, you could head back upstairs and you could read some more. And the next piece of advice might say to ask questions about the other person to engage them in the conversation. So then again, you could go back downstairs, have a conversation with a different person, and then just make a point of, even if it's just once, asking them a question about them to engage them in the conversation. And you start to build up that practice, and you're starting to implement the advice immediately, and you're starting to build this like personal proof of the advice working, and personal examples that you can go back to when you need to think, when you're thinking of what advice you need for the situation you're about to enter. You can think back to your personal examples and call on them, and then have more confidence in them that they will work, because they worked that first time, so why wouldn't they work again? And it, all in all, just leads to the book's advice being 10 times more effective in your personal life. And a time when I realized that this was something I was missing out on was with the book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now, an amazing book on why small little habits done repeatedly make a large change and a big impact in your life. I had read this book cover to cover once, and I realized, I didn't get as much from it as I thought I would, as much as people claim that they're getting from it. Well, so I decided I'll read it again. What did I do again? I sort of read it cover to cover again. Shock horror, I got just as much value as I did from the first time, and I did that a third time. And it's upon that realization that I have read it cover to cover 3 times and not gained as much insight from the book, as much value from the book as others have, that sort of leads me to believe, maybe I am reading in the, sort of incorrect way, and there's a better way to read the book. Which is when I suddenly remembered, Hamza's piece of advice, you got to just take action. The moment there's like an action step in the book, go and take it. And then just, aim to take that action step everywhere possible. So, I'll probably end up having to read that book a 4th time, go through it by taking action on the things spoken of, to gain more value from it than I have the last few times. There's a book I'm reading currently, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. That's another good book. Well, so far it's a good book. And there are a few bits and pieces where you come to the end of a chapter and it says Q&A, questions and action steps, or questions and actions. And I started off well. The first time I came across it, I answered the questions, which is what you're meant to do when you just come through the end of a chapter. You do the bits that it tells you to do. But then the next couple chapters, I was in bed, and it was I was meant to be reading to, stay away from the screens and, get a bit more tired. And fiction's probably better for this, but I don't have any fiction books I haven't already read, so I just kind of read self-improvement books and occasionally philosophy. So, I was reading the book, but I was tired and I was meant to be calm, going to sleep, and it was quite deep questions that you've got to give yourself time to think about. And I didn't feel that was going to help me fall asleep. It would probably just wake me up as I would be racking my mind for answers. So I kind of skipped past it. And then it's probably led to me not getting as much value from that chapter as I could have before. So what I'll probably do before progressing any further with that book is I will go back, reread the chapters I did that on. And when I get to the end of the chapter, I will do that activity that's set out for you at the end of the chapter. Because, that's how the book was intended to be done. And that is how I will go about reading the rest of the book for maximum value taken from it. Because, at the end of the day, I speak about my love for books a lot, and I may as well, get the most from my love for them by reading what I'm going to call the correct way. Because you don't have to agree with me. If you would rather read a book cover to cover and that's how you get value from it, go ahead, keep doing it. I'm just here to give you pieces of advice from my life that help me do things a bit better, improve a bit more. But, if it doesn't help you, then don't implement it. But you can't know without trying at least once or twice, eh? But that's it for this one. I just wanted to share with you the way I read books for gaining maximum value from them. If you did enjoy it, you could leave a like. If you find frequent value from my channel, you can subscribe, because there'll be more videos, at least 7 every week, as long as I can keep it going. And if you have anything to say, comments are always open. I appreciate all the support that I get from all of you who choose to support me through the comments. A lot, I really do appreciate it. And you're more than welcome to put down in the comments suggestions for videos you'd like to see me do, or possibly see me do, depending on whether I can actually speak on the topic well enough or not. Or, just a piece of advice you think that would improve the channel. I've already had a couple of those and I appreciate them a lot, and I will do my best to see if I can implement them. But yeah, that's it for this one. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in another one, and peace out.